Hello, all you cosmic travelers and wanderers. This is Darlene Grift and K Melissa Waterman, inviting you to join us today in our episode of Expansion from Within, Exploring Multidimensionality.
Let me introduce you to my friend and dear colleague, Darlene Grift. She is a lifetime experiencer, a medical intuitive, and a multidimensional mediator for over 35 years. She's also an author, an artist, a teacher, and a mentor for spiritually invested people.
And K Melissa Waterman is my friend and colleague, and she's an intuitive mentor, a spiritual teacher. She also works with energy on many levels. In the past, Melissa has worked with Dr. Joe Dispenza on his research team.
Join us on our journey of meeting multidimensional beings, exploring what it means to be human, and expanding our spiritual evolution. Today, we're going to talk about empaths and what an empath is and what the difference between empaths and the rest of us are. So I've got some questions for you. Are you ready?
Sure. Always ready.
So can you just define what an empath is for us?
So an empathic person is someone that takes on others' vibrations, their other levels of their emotion. They might be talking to somebody and then, that person is emotional, whether it's anger, sadness, something, and the person that is an empath kind of takes that energy on. And in doing so, they don't know what is theirs or the person's. Like they walk away feeling angry or feeling sad, and they can't quite place what that is. So it's very confusing, but that's what they do, is they take on others' energy. They're more absorbing.
So what you're describing to me is clairsentience.
Mm-hmm.
That a person can sense things, can feel things. Would you say a clairsentient is an empath, or an empath is a clairsentient?
I would say that an empath can be a clairsentient, but not. I don't know if all clairsentient. It's. I think it's just a fine line of how you would define that. I think there's more empaths than there are clairsentients.
I see. So I was thinking of the other clairs. Clairvoyant, which is when you see things, and so there's clairaudient when you hear things, and claircognizance, right? When you just have a knowing.
Mm-hmm.
My experience has been that when I've met people who have one or more of the clairs, that they are also very empathic. They're very, very open. They can sense all kinds of things. They're sensitive in general. Is that your experience, or are do we need to make a real separation between empaths and people with other talent?
Well, I think the people with other talents, they may take on energy. They may feel it. They bring it into their body. Mm-hmm. My experience with empaths in the way that they may not know how to manage that. So I'm not sure about clairaudio and whatever. Do they bring it in and do they manage it different? There might be a difference there.
Right. I see that. I think that's an interesting thing to keep thinking about. Some of the clients that I have may have one of the clairs or mm-hmm. be one of the clairs. I'm not sure how to talk about it, but they're also very sensitive, and they're questioning what's mine and what's not. We talk about techniques, which later we're going to talk about some of the techniques that will help all of us. We'll get into that in a little bit. So I work with people who consider themselves highly sensitive. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, how does that fit in with empaths?
I think that highly sensitive people they may not view themselves as empaths because they're highly sensitive to sound or food or smells or whatever, right? So they would, they may have just had a conversation at lunch with somebody and had something that they shouldn't have eaten, but they had a difficult conversation. So they walk away not feeling well, thinking it was because I ate that, as opposed to I just had that difficult conversation and now my stomach is upset because of the difficult conversation because I just took it on, even if it isn't about them. That's what empaths, I think, they're really, I can't say programmed, that is who they are, is that they are so wide open that in an emotional conversation, that energy, that vibration, that frequency kind of impacts their own energy field. And then they have it in their space. So they really don't know, is this mine or someone else's? And there's tools to decide that. There's tools to help to figure that out.
I'd love to share a little bit about my own experience coming into understanding how some of these things work. I remember early on as a therapist, I recognized that I was feeling anxious sometimes. And it took me a couple of years to stop thinking I was yet anxious and start asking, do you feel anxious? And every time I had a feeling, whether it was anxiety or anger or sadness or, some of the lower frequency emotions, whenever I just knee-jerk started to ask the question rather than assume it was mine, always the answer was yes. And it started to build my own confidence to trust that what I was getting was I was picking up somebody else's something, right? I was picking up their emotion. And then when the session was over, once I recognized that it wasn't actually mine, then I used a technique of saying, not mine, and literally wiping it off, just saying, not mine, not mine. And if the cool thing about that little technique is if you do that and it sticks, then it's probably yours. But if you do that and it goes, it really isn't yours. And so that helped me figure out what was mine and what wasn't mine in the very beginning.
And the other thing that you're bringing this up is that in the work that I do and the many people that do similar work, what I started to find out through the years is that I would get a physical symptom because the person that I'm going to talk to the next day would bring it in. Right. So it's not just that there's a person in front of you or that you're dealing with somebody on the phone, that you're taking their energy in. It also becomes that you're starting to, in that telepathic way, in that energetic sharing, you know who's in your book the next day, right? You may not know what they're dealing with, but you might get a symptom a day or two before. How I use that is, okay, so, and I don't ask, is this mine or not? I go, how am I going to deal with this? Because then it helps me when they call, whoever they are, right? That, oh yeah, I just did this and it worked. And that going back to the not mine, I think it's also important that when even anxiety that comes in, and a lot of people are feeling that nowadays, is that early in the morning before you even start to really get up out of bed, there's that anxiety that you can't really place what it is, or your brain goes crazy and starts to think about, the kids or the day or the world or the whatever. Just to almost like, no, it's just a no. Like soon as that thought starts to come, it's no, because you don't need all of that. You don't need all of that input coming in where you believe or think or, rationalize that you have to deal with it.
Right. I agree. I think it's so important for us all to have some strategies. And so I'm looking forward to that in a few minutes. So do you think that empaths have a hard time in general, like a harder time than people who are not empathic?
Well, as I see it, they're more heart-based. Unless they know the tools to help themselves, I think they could have a harder time because they're, jumping ahead to the purpose of them. We have many more empaths than we do not on this planet, right? If you think of a filtering system, that's what because everybody's shedding, right? Humans tend to shed. They tend to go out and blurt. They tend to, react to things. They need to expand and express all over the place. And the empaths are like a filtering system. If they're in conversation, if they hear something, if they're, in tune with something, to allow that information to come in, but they do not have to hold on to it. Allow it to come in, even, yes, it's not mine, but I bless it, or I send it to the light, or, I put a protection over the person that just spoke with me, or whatever that is, so that you're taking an action, you're not taking it on to process it yourself. I think that's
Right.
where things get a little muddy for empaths, so that life becomes a bit harder.
I've heard some people describe empaths as sponges, that they're just walking
Yes,
around absorbing it all. And I think there has to be a way to have that modified.
right. They just, and they need to know that they're an empath. I mean, there's lots of books out there now about empaths, and is it a gift or a curse? But how to manage it. It's not an illness that has no cure,
Right.
and
Right.
and they do have purpose.
Let's talk about the purpose. The first question is, are they having a harder time due to the world events?
Yes.
And why? Like, why is it harder for them?
Well, you hear the things that are going on in the world. You see the struggle with people. You see the death. Whether that's COVID or the Ukraine or whatever is happening in this moment, right? About the struggle that humans are having. If you've listened to anything on the news media, as an empath, it's hard not to get sucked in to that, to not visualize, dream about, be in the position of what it was like when you just saw this family that's, carrying two kids across the border. There's all of that is much more saturating us than ever before. And the media really does a good job on that, of giving us places to attach to, right? To open our hearts to, in a good way. It's a good thing that we open our hearts and maybe take an action on that. But as an empath, that action piece actually is important. Whether that action piece is saying, okay, I'm going to donate money, or I'm going to do something that's spiritual for them by holding the space for them, this person, this family, whatever. It's the action that helps it to be alleviated within the empath.
Mm-hmm. I think that's excellent. I mean, that's actually then a tool.
Yes.
To have some action rather than just thinking of yourself as a sponge and holding it all. Even sponges don't do well holding the water all the time, right?
They have to be wrung out.
They need to be wrung out. That's right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the wrunging out process might not be pleasant, but it's important.
Yeah, important.
So what is their real purpose? I mean, we've alluded to it, but what do you think the purpose of the empath is? Say more.
I believe that it's to do that. They become a filtering system. So if they can look at themselves as a screen, so, a screen, wind can blow through, stuff blows through, they are an open vessel for information, frequencies, emotions, because everything has a frequency, to go through us, in knowing what processes work for that person, with them knowing that, we'll talk about this in a minute, the goodbye process, the not my process, whatever that is, they can free themselves up without getting junked up with other people's feeling that they hold on to for way too long. And then it creates other issues for them, health issues, emotional issues, anxiety, because I think and wonder, in working with certain really strong empaths that know that they are, I wonder if they believe it is their purpose to process it, because that's overwhelming, and in all ways. They don't have to process anything that does not belong to them.
Right, they need to release it though.
Yeah, they need to take action to release it.
It needs to be released. It's imperative that it be released. And if they actually own it, there's something that I've found with the empaths that I work with, that when they're not understanding they're an empath, or they're not, or they have the belief that they have to hold it and own it, they're like literally they're creating a story rather than releasing the story or the timeline. They're trying to make it make sense. And so they create a story. It's usually quite negative to help validate whatever the emotion is that they're having. And it's not in their service. It's like, no. Let's do something to release this energy rather than process it. I mean, this is a new idea in my mind, this moment, but there's something about processing it that's saying this is mine and I need to work through it, rather than, oh no, this isn't mine and I can, oh good, I'm a filter. I've gathered what is needed to be, and now I can send this all to the light. I can all send this for transformation to the light. But releasing seems really important and under talked about.
Yeah, because it does become their story. And there's endless stories that can happen with that. Every day of taking on something from somebody that you think that is sending you energy or doing this to you or that to you in a way because you're an empath and you're just picking it up. And now this hurts or that hurts or, I didn't sleep last night because somebody came in and, it's those places that stories get connected to. And you're right, then they own it as theirs when it may not be, but it keeps them stuck.
Right. Well, I remember living at the ocean, and the screen door was a great filter.
Mm-hmm.
It was beautiful. The salt air would come through in the morning, but if you didn't clean that screen like once a week, it was disgusting and it was sticky and everything stuck to it because of the salt. And it was not a screen for very long. It no longer actually functioned as a screen.
Yeah.
That release process is spray washing the screen. Like it's a way to like go, okay, let's start again and be an effective filter.
Yes. That's a good analogy, really, because that screen it's our energy field around us, that it has to come through that. So a lot of times it doesn't enter the body unless you've had such a deep impact and an emotional connection to whatever was, you just witnessed a car accident, right? That can just go right through the energy field and into your heart and into your body, right? That'll be more difficult to let go of. But a lot of the things that we see or that we bring in from somebody else gets put in our energy field, and it's not really in our physical body, but it's out here. And there are ways to clear that up. Like you said, with the screen, it needs to be spray washed.
Right. All right, well, let's talk about the tools. I have a kind of a list. I started with protective methods. I'm wondering if you can talk about protective methods that you use, and I'll talk about some of the ones that I do.
So the protective methods, one of them is I believe it's pronounced the Wire-Kocha, which is we're talking about the screen, right? The Wire-Kocha is what the Southern Native or South American natives call they consider it like a heavy drape. Shamans talk about it as like a heavy drape that you can still see through, but it protects the energy field that you're in, the bubble that we're in, that vortex or that toroidal field that we are in. So if you picture that like at the 8th chakra and you kind of bring it down around your body and under your feet, what I have people do is, close their eyes. And if they are visual or even kinesthetic or any kind of intuition at all, they take their hands and they close their eyes and they take their hands from as far as they can see on their sides and in front of them. If they sense, if they feel, if there's places in that fabric that feels like it's frayed or it's open or there's a gaping hole or whatever they're seeing, they can mend that with the hands. So by the time they leave the front, everything is mended from top to bottom in the front of them. Then they take that and they turn it so that the back is in the front and they do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So for empaths, that is one way of protection. I would do that on a regular basis with them. Does it have to be it depends on what their job is. It depends on what they're doing in their life. If they're around a lot of people, if they're talking to people, if they have heaviness in the family that they are dealing with, that they might be taking on from siblings, parents, whatever, checking in on that so that field is protected, so that the screen is cleaned and you're not allowing anything in.
Right. It sounds like an auric repair. One of the things, there's 3 that I use that I teach people to do when they know they're going into a situation where they might be highly effective. If they're aware that they're going to have a conversation that they know is charged, I'll work with them and have that, and we'll do a meditative process where we create a bell jar, just a kind of a jar that goes over top of the auric field, over top of them, and it's permeable if they want it to be, but it doesn't have to be. It can be glass, like something that they can see through and breathe through, but nothing can come in. That's been very helpful for a lot of people when they can remember to say, oh, I have a bell jar, and just imagine it coming down over them. I know in my own practice, if I'm listening to or witnessing very traumatic material and the person is in their full traumatic story and they need to express it and I want to hold the space for it, I'll ask for some white light and some gauzy material. I think of it as sort of that cotton that comes out of the top of the bottle of pills, you know, that long, thin piece of cotton.
Mhm.
And I just imagine it wrapping around me and just giving me a layer of protection while I'm saying, not mine, this is not my story. I'm just holding space for them, like very consciously and with great intention. That has helped me tremendously. I was a trauma therapist for a good while, and I really needed to have that protection. Another thing, if you are working with people and you're having people come into your own space, having a bowl of water can often help some of the energy move into that water.
Mhm.
You want to, you know, maybe throw it down the toilet or put it outside, but you want to be conscious of where you put that water when you're done. That's another little tool that I've used. And then the last one, I help people light protection, certainly just to bring in and ask for some white light protection, or to ask for guides, archangels, or any high order beings I'll ask for sometimes for myself, but to bring in the light and that kind of, you know, the knowing, the intention is certainly the most important thing there, the knowing that something is in your space that's protecting you. And then I'll also do meditations with people where we create a Teflon cloak
Mhm.
where things just slide off. They're able to witness, but they don't have to bring it all the way in. Also very similar to the veil. What was it called? Wairacocha?
Wyra, I think it's WIR or it could be WHIR. I'm not quite sure how you spell it.
Wairacocha.
Wyra. And talking about how to protect that way with a light in the bell jar. A mirror is a good thing to create a shield that is a mirror. So especially when you're dealing with toxic people that want to, like, you need to take your accountability for whatever they're putting out there, right? So it's not about, oh, this is not my problem at all, but you need to find the truth that might be in that. But the rest, you know, you mirror it back to them. We're just putting up a shield that is a reflective shield so that it bounces off of you. If they take it back, they take it back, or it just goes into the universe.
Right. And, you know, the whole idea of setting an intention to send things to the universe, to send things to the sun for transformation, to send things to the universe for transformation is very helpful, to just be able to say, oh, I'm going to release this energy and I send it for transformation. I
Yes.
send it off for transformation. I think that's responsible, actually. So you're not just energetically throwing negative stuff around and thinking it's not there, but it really is.
Right. The intention, if you know that this is what you do as an empath, this is how I take things on or whatever, the intention to not take it on and create and find a tool that works for you, but remembering the tool is going to be so that it's the intention to remember the tool.
Sure, or half the solution, not necessarily the problem. So let's move on to clearing methods. I know you love Ho'oponopono.
I do. I lost touch with it years ago. I mean, I used it for a good many years and then somehow forgot about it. And when I came back into doing it probably 10 years ago or so, a lot of people really have had miracles in relation to owning what that is, because it's an accountability piece, right? So it's, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you.
Right.
So it's also a clearing. So you can identify maybe what specifics of something's happening in a conversation. So at the end of it, you can own your piece, or you hear about something and you can do the Ho'opono with that person, or you have a dream and you can do that Ho'opono with that person. It really clears your energy and your accountability so that you can walk away feeling less burdened.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is I do is a goodbye process. So for therapists, for people that are in dealing with people on a regular basis during the day, that a lot of times we take that with us without consciously thinking about those people, right? But we get tired at night, or you have a dream state about that person or something. So what I usually tell them to do at the end of the evening, or just leaving work, I say goodbye to so and so, and whatever comes up, I say goodbye to so and so who was in the car accident, and the fact that he broke his leg. Or I say, you think of, what feels like intuitively did you pick up on that is still sticking there. Sometimes it's just the person's name. Say goodbye to this person, I say goodbye. And for me, and for the people that have used this, it feels energetically releasing. That's the best I can do. It feels like, oh, it wasn't just saying goodbye to them in person or on the phone. This is a whole other way of releasing them.
Right. It reminds me of a tool that I've taught people when they get, another person's energy is intruding when they're trying to sleep, to be able to say, oh, no, not now. You're not allowed in my bedroom. Whatever's going on, I'll deal with you later. To just have some boundary setting around whatever. We just own that they're intrusive thoughts, but sometimes it's actually energetics where people are maybe wanting something from us, where they're longing for connection. They're having their own process and it's coming through to us. Having a clear boundary of what can come into your bedroom. Most of us don't let just anybody in our bedroom, and certainly not our clients.
I just want to say something about going back to, they have purpose, right? They have purpose in taking on things to not process them on their own, but to let them go. But their lesson is boundaries.
Right.
How do you help them establish boundaries in all areas of their life? Because the most likelihood is deep empath has very little boundaries in many areas in life. And if they can see that they have less boundaries and keep them up, then it's not about them being less of an empath. It just means that they can function better.
Exactly. I think that's exactly right. So some of the other clearing methods I've used are, I teach people how to cut cords. I instruct people to go in, to have a quiet moment with themselves with their eyes closed and just sense where a cord might be attached to them. If there are heart cords, usually I say leave them alone. Heart cords are usually healthy cords that are mutual, that if you have a heart cord, and there are certain circumstances when that might not be true, but I want to deal with heart cords very specifically, and I tend to help people rather than let them do that on their own. So if they find that they have, a cord from their lower gut, say, and it's just a coworker or a client that they have where there's something that doesn't feel quite right, then I instruct people to have a pair of beautiful scissors with lots of ribbons, and when they cut the cord, they immediately place one hand on the place of their body and they send love to it. And then they, next breath, put their hand on the other side of the cord that goes back to the other person, and say, I send you with love. I send you with love and positive everything, so that you can have your own journey, so that you can have all of your own energy for your journey. And then both hands are on the spot where this cord was. And then I ask them to check on it a couple of days in a row to make sure that the other person hasn't reattached, because some people's energy is quite intense. I think cord cutting is very powerful and can really help with that releasing process, right? Because if you don't know you have a cord and there is an exchange, you're also giving something away. Maybe you're giving more than you think you are in an energetic cord, but this way you're keeping your energy and letting them have theirs. There's no drain is occurring.
And the other thing connected to that, there's sometimes the perspective that, and I don't think it's strictly related to empaths, but somebody's doing this to me. That they're doing this to me. They are connecting me and to me in this way. They are hurting me because, they're doing this to me. I think that perspective needs to be shifted, or they will keep creating that.
Well, and that blame perspective is how they're adding energy to the system.
Yes.
Right? Because it's a system that if they were healthily detached, like literally the idea of the cord is a healthy detachment. Once it's cut, there is no, it's nonchalant. It's a healthy detachment that's not full of anything. No
Right.
panic, no anger, no. It's just, oh yeah, I send you with love. You get to go live your life. You get to have all your energy for your journey, and I get to have mine for mine.
Yeah.
It's neutral. It's a neutralizer.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that I use is I teach people a fire ceremony. Now, this fire ceremony, I learned it through the Moneki rites, through the Peruvian shamans. And it basically is any flame, a fake flame, a light bulb, any source of light, the sun, you name it. Whatever feels uncomfortable or unwanted, you just push it into the flame. You just have a flame in front of you and you push it into the flame. And I say, I release this for the highest good of all. And then after you release it, you pull back up over your head and you bring in love, and you bring in love. And then you push in whatever, I feel angry at this person, I release it, and I pull back love. I pull back love. And it's a beautiful, beautiful ceremony for any negative emotion, for any negative situation, particularly good for worry, when we're worrying about people because you can see their train wreck about to happen. I just release the situation and I pull back love. Yeah, I think that fire ceremony is great. Moving energy to be renewed. It's what I spoke about earlier. Just the idea of, I'll sometime open a window, just an energetic window. I'll cut a window and then just send energy through it. And I put it to the sun to be transformed, to be renewed. Tend to send energy to the earth these days. I feel like the earth has enough going on. I instruct people to grow roots, to pull up the earth's energy, to help them center and ground, and to bring energy back down into her. But sending some of the toxic waste that we've got, that we're trying to clear, I'm not sure that's a good idea these days.
Yeah, I think she needs as much help as she can. If we're sending her love and light and all of that, that would be great.
So I think the sun can handle it a little better at the moment. That's my hit on it.
And all this is action.
Right.
Like, you have to take an action. You just can't sit there and say, I'm an empath, and feel miserable about it. You have to, not have to, but it would be good if you chose to do something that made you more comfortable, where you feel like you're more in the process of holding your own boundaries and living a life that you want to live, and not be compounded by other people's feelings and thoughts.
Well, it's effective. It's way more effective than non-action. Other things I have down are deep, slow breathing techniques. In the yogic field, there's many different kinds of breathing techniques. If you're not aware of those, just slowing your breath down, sometimes counting to 4, holding for 4, counting to 4 on the inhale, holding for 4, counting to 4 on the exhale. Even if you just practice exhaling slower, like a lot slower, it can be quite renewing. Any consciousness to the breath, any consciousness, even if you're just recognizing that you're hyperventilating, is still better than just hyperventilating without the consciousness, right?
Right.
And then grounding techniques we started to mention, like growing roots and so forth. Meditation. I ask people to start with 3 minutes a day. I work with lots of people who say they cannot meditate. And I'm highly opposed to this sentence, I cannot meditate, because people think that if they close their eyes and they focus on something, that they should automatically be able to just do that for 3 minutes and not have anything intrude. And I personally think that the practice of changing one's mind from the intrusion to the focus point, whatever it is, whether you're focusing on your breathing or you're saying the word Om or whatever your focus point is if you can just keep moving your mind back to the focus point, that's the purpose. That's like at least one of the purposes of meditating, that you're saying, oh no, not that, this. Oh no, not that, this. And I don't care whether you do it a million times in that 3 minutes. That's what's good for you. That's the thing that is actually helping you come back into your own center. And so I think it's a really start with 3 minutes. When you get really good at changing, and you don't get caught and just go off and running with your thought, when you get really good at it, then move to 4 or 5 minutes, and then get really good at it, then move to 6 or 7, and work your way up. I think it's beautiful. Do you have anything you want to say about grounding techniques or meditation before I move on?
No, I agree with you. The roots down into Mother Earth and bringing her energy up for grounding, hugging a tree. I mean, I think that a lot of people make fun of that, but really the energy in a tree, when you can go out and even put your back against it, put your back against it, bring your heart up to the tree trunk, any of that, because they're just very grounded. Trees are very grounded, so they have that energy. Not only that, but they talk to each other, and they have all the roots that are in communication with each other. So in doing that, you're not just getting the support of one tree, you're getting a network of trees.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I often tell people, if you can find a place to sit with your back up against a tree and there's a little bit of water running by, you're in the perfect spot. Like that's the place where you can be restored very, very readily.
Yes.
I work with this Kirlian camera, and in the studies to understand how to utilize it and make the assessments I do, I learned that in Russia, they'll take a GDV reading, and if your energy is low, they'll say, before you have this surgery, we're going to put it off a week and you go camping. That's an actual prescription. Like this is the best thing for your body, is to go be in nature for the next week and then come back and you'll have a much more successful surgery. That really got me awake to the idea, like, oh, we need to be out there more than we are, and we need to sit down on the ground. I know now we're calling it earthing, which I personally think that's pretty funny, given that we've all been walking around on it all this time, but with some intention, right? The name has helped people have more intention to the idea of connecting to it. So the only other thing I have here is EFT, emotional freedom technique, or any kind of tapping. There's Access Consciousness does tapping on some of the finer points that need to be tapped on very, very lightly. And EFT is a 12 point. There's 12 tapping points on the face, torso, the neck, under the arm, and the hands, along with a really interesting, the middle part of the standard EFT technique is something called the gamut, where you do all these eye movements and sing a song. And that part has so much science behind it for literally resetting your brain.
Yeah.
If you're upset, if you're having a moment, whether it's because you've taken on other people's energy or it's your own energy, if you can sing a song and then multiply, a hard multiplication, like 7 or 8 times tables, not one you know a trick to, but you have to really make your brain think of it. The neurons pass over the corpus callosum. They switch from the left brain of the singing, right, to the right brain of the math and back again. And it's like a reset button. It literally will make you go, oh, okay, I'm okay now. Like it's a pretty sweet treat. But EFT, the whole protocol, I personally think is very, very helpful. I have lots and lots of people using it.
Yeah, and you have a video on that on your YouTube, right?
I do. On my YouTube, I have 2 videos. One is me teaching the EFT protocol, which is 20 minutes long. And then there's a just do it. Here, I'll do it with you kind of EFT 3-minute video. Yeah.
And where would they find that?
If they go on YouTube and search K Melissa Waterman, it'll come up. It differentiates me, that K.
So, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, these will be there too. These videos will be there eventually.
Okay, because the tapping and those techniques, not just for empaths, it feels like it's also for, the anxiety that you might have, or any of those places of bringing in a different consciousness. Stroke victims actually do really well with that, with the right and left patterning of the brain, so that they are overriding. Because we could get into that conversation. There's 5 backup systems that the body has when there is something that is off in the body. There's backup systems that the body tries to find the neural pathways in order to complete the section that is in either disorganized or ill or whatever. So those techniques of the tapping, the cross crawling, all of that are stress release. And dyslexia, by the way, it helps with dyslexia.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Brain gym, whatever, any of the brain gym techniques.
Brain gym. Mhm.
Where you do this thing, you
Yeah.
clasp your hands and pull them inside and twist yourself up. It just helps your vagal nerve, the polyvagal nerve. I think that's just about everything.
Great.
I think the last thing that I have written on my paper is just that we have to really think about ourselves as a whole being, right? That there's not just our energetics that need support. It's not just our physical that needs support. We're all pretty good at going to the doctors. But our emotional, spiritual, our energetic, physical, we're one being, and they all need to be supported. And so some of these techniques are really good for everybody, empath or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's very stressful to be alive right now.
Yes.
And to be able to call on our guides and just access more support is really, really essential, I think.
I do too. And we'll get in it because, things happen, everything happens for a reason, and whatever the reason is, we may not know for the next 3 to 10 years, but we'll come out of it in a different and better place.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's true. And even if it doesn't feel true, I think that's a great way to look at it all.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, because it can keep you more sane than going down the rabbit hole of the darkness of, what some people own, that's all they can talk about, and that's not healthy.
Right. I want to say one last thing about the darkness, and that is, on planet Earth, the light and the dark are equal.
Yes.
It's a binary planet that's based on a negative and positive charge that has to be in balance or it won't work. It's like a battery. And so if the darkness is getting bigger and it's all we can see, that means the light is also bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's right where we put our focus. So
agreed. It is. Our perception and our focus is really, and our intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to remind everyone that they can submit questions, and they should do so by going to the soulunion.com website, which is Darlene's website. And there they can email Darlene and we'll collect them. We only have 1 or 2 questions, so it'd be kind of fun if you guys would ask more questions, and then we'll have even more to talk about. So soulunion.com.
Great. Thank you, Melissa.